hard work just helps us understand that I'm choosing to give my resources to this.
But I am also helping them manage their feelings, like helping them feel seen and
Exactly.
heard.
We do things out of obligation, but they do still contribute to a form of happiness.
We can pause and insert a little agency and intentionality here and redistribute these responsibilities among a broader collection of people, I suppose.
There's a lot of parts of daughtering that feel good. It feels good to be a member of a family, to have a support system, to have people rely on you.
This is episode 438 of the Brilliant Balance podcast, Carrying the Family, the Burden and Blessing of Daughtering with Dr. Allison Alford. Listen, today's conversation is for you, the listener, if you have always been the steady one in your family, the one who notices what needs to be handled before anyone else does. You're probably the one remembering the birthdays, managing all the sibling dynamics, smoothing tensions, carrying the emotional temperature of the room. The one who has been daughtering, right, long after childhood officially ended. And I am joined today by an expert in this, Dr. Allison Alford. She is a communication scholar, a speaker, a clinical associate professor at Baylor, and the author of the forthcoming book, Good Daughtering: The Work You've Always Done, the Credit You've Never Gotten, and How to Finally Feel Like Enough. I mean, dang, do you love that title? Allison studies the invisible, often unspoken labor that adult daughters perform inside their families. It's all that emotional management, relational upkeep, all the responsibility that so many women are carrying without having language for it or any kind of recognition. And with her PhD in communication studies and nearly 2 decades of teaching and research, Allison really brings a level of academic rigor to this subject, in addition to deep humanity. Her work is giving voice to something that so many women feel but really struggle to articulate: the tension between obligation and autonomy, love and resentment, devotion and depletion. So in this episode, we're talking about what it really means to carry the family and how adult daughters can begin to redefine their worth, their sense of responsibility, and being enough on their own terms. So let's welcome Allison Alford to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm always up for a discussion about daughtering and how we can provide a little bit of relief for the women who need it most.
Absolutely. And I have to say, like, we've just stumbled into this topic that is sitting at the crosshairs of the audience that listens to this show. So I think your subject is going to be really resonant with everyone who's here today. Before we get into all of your expertise, and it's so deep, I would love to just have them learn a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about, like, your story, the 3-minute version of who is Allison.
Absolutely. I am a Texas girl, even though my accent doesn't always give that away immediately. I'm a daughter, a mom of 2 teenagers, a wife, with a dog, a cat, a house. So I guess pretty idyllic in that sense. And I am somebody who all my life has been aware of the dynamics of how people interact.
Yeah.
I've always been kind of that empath who notices people and notices what they're thinking and doing and what they're saying. And I realized as I became a researcher and I was getting my PhD that I'm also pretty good at noticing what is not here. Like looking around at a circle of friends or a party and thinking, who's not
What's
invited,
missing?
or what's missing from this picture. And in many ways, I have directed that to women. And women's lives. What is it that women are doing but not getting credit for? Or how are women shut out from this experience where they could get some value or get some relief? And that's kind of made it my mission, really, to reach women and say, there's a lot of ways that just by talking, communicating, and creating awareness around certain situations, we can support each other. We can hold each other up and say, girl, you're doing it. And I see it. Even if society isn't giving you credit
Right.
for it, I know you're doing it. And it's hard work and I appreciate it.
That's amazing. It's amazing because when you give voice to something that has been unspoken, I think it's so powerful. Just naming something that people have not had language for, I think is a really powerful shift. I know Brene Brown has done it so many times, another Texas academic, and we love her so much for it. So just being able to give voice to something that we don't necessarily have language for is powerful in its own right. So when you talk about carrying the family, right, or daughtering, what are you naming that so many adult daughters feel but don't really have the words for?
Yeah, the word daughtering is meant to be this active way of thinking of adult daughters and families. And sometimes when you say what daughters do in families, women's minds jump to what we'll do for the elderly or
Mm-hmm.
what we might do if someone is sick. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about what you started doing when you were 20 and you moved out of the house and you had to call and soothe and smooth and organize and think in advance and buy the gift and spend the money. And it keeps going and changing in your 20s, 30s, 40s. And so daughtering is really focusing on the choice that we have, the agency, but also the way that we purposely show up in our families to try to help keep it running and keep it together because we like being in a family. But we have to name that hard work and give ourselves credit for it.
Yeah, and you got into some interesting categories right away. I immediately started thinking about my sister-in-law when you were talking about some of this. She's the oldest, I'm married to the oldest child, but she's the oldest daughter. And when I look at the difference in the way the two of them carry responsibility in their family, it falls exactly along these lines that you're describing. So what are some of those like buckets of work that you see most often? Maybe I shouldn't even call them work. Maybe it's activity that you see daughters taking on.
Work is a great way to describe it. There's all kinds of work: paid work, unpaid work, parenting work, friendship work, community work. And the word work just helps us understand that I'm choosing to give my resources to this.
Mhm.
And it's not easy, just even if I make it look easy. So when we think about daughters and daughtering, I like to identify four buckets, and that's doing, thinking, feeling, and being work. The doing work is the most obvious. That's where we see someone take a meal to someone. We're doing something for the family, or the daughter fills her mom's stocking at Christmas. She's doing something, or making phone calls. So all kinds of tasks fall under the sort of doing or task work. The thinking work is what we do inside our mind. It's our cognitive,
It's the never ending loop. Yeah.
supervisory.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's when we're the family CEO because we're organizing, we're planning ahead, we're 3 steps ahead, removing roadblocks so that we don't have an issue down the line. And that's really tough for people to see because we never hit the problematic thing because the daughter has mentally gone ahead
Yeah. It's just
and
smooth the path. Hmm.
handled it. But it's a super valuable way for that women show up in families just by thinking ahead.
That's the thinking work. Okay. So doing and
Yes,
thinking.
the doing and thinking. The third one is the feeling work. And that's really the emotion part, which I think a lot of women identify with. And, especially with the conversations around eldest daughtering, we're really identifying this. So there's two kinds of feeling work, and one is just helping everybody feel good. Okay, if I call my mom, I'm like, "How was work today? How are you? Oh, I'm sorry to hear about that. Oh, how is Nana? Oh, how's your sister?" And I just soothe and kind of smooth it over. Another kind of work is when we make ourselves seem okay to make the situation okay, even when maybe internally we feel some friction. And I think of that happening when I go to a family dinner and somebody brings up politics, and I just keep my mouth closed. And I'm really working on self control in order
Hmm.
to make the moment good, to make everybody feel
It's kind of
good
that
in that
going along to get
experience.
along. Like I'll just be quiet and go along to get along.
Yeah, and that takes restraint. And that
Yes.
means that it's used our resources. We go home, we're exhausted. We're like,
Hmm.
why am I so tired? And it's like, because I held back what I could have said, what I wanted to say for the good of the family. So that's the emotion work part. the soothing and the smoothing and the fixing my face and things like that to make things good. So that last kind of work is being work, and that's identity stuff. So how am I representing my family as a daughter of the family, even when nobody's around? How am I telling others about
Oh,
how
I
great our
see.
family is?
The
Keeping
reputation
traditions
work.
going,
Yeah.
the legacy.
Yes.
What is it that I
Yes.
do with my children that's important for helping them think my family's
Oh my
cool?
God. I've never thought about this part. Yeah. This is the
Yeah. And
breakthrough.
so, yeah. So thinking, feeling, and being are absolutely invisible in
Invisible.
that they're not something we see people doing with their hands and feet.
So
You
let
know,
me see if I get this right. So,
yeah,
or if I'm getting it, what you're saying. So the thinking work is smoothing things out in advance. I'm seeing around corners, I'm handling things, sort of all that executive function work that we often do as mothers. We're sort of translating into our extended or family of origin. And then feeling work is I am responsible for, is it just mom or is it my parents' emotions?
it's
Everybody's.
any parent. You could even extend daughtering to a step parent or a
Hmm.
parent-in-law. And so I use the word parent. I would say it's mostly moms,
Mostly moms.
but not everybody has
Your
a mom
example was
that they
moms.
do
That's why I
that
asked
with.
the question. But
Yeah.
it's largely
Hmm.
like I'm going to make sure that I am not causing negative feelings and that I am also
Hmm.
helping them manage their feelings, like helping them feel seen and
Exactly.
heard. And then here the being piece I had never thought about of just what is my role in legacy, identity, tradition, right? What am I carrying on as a member of this family? That is really important. And that it does fall to the daughters to carry those things on. That's fascinating. My mom, I'm thinking about my mom as a daughter now. And to
Mm.
this day, her siblings and their spouses, she has all brothers, call her to participate in and be coached through these family traditions, like traditional foods and stuff at the holidays. And they
Yeah.
insist that she's the one who is like, bearing. It's so fascinating how it works in layers.
And some of those things are really fun and
Yes,
pleasant to
that's
do,
the
right?
blessing part of it in some ways,
I
right?
think if I was called and said, "What's that special family dish?" and somebody was like, "You make it the best," and
That's
they
what
said
happens.
nice things, it feels good. And so there's a lot of parts of daughtering that feel good. It feels good to be a member of a family, to have a support system, to have people rely on you. But much like our other jobs, whether it's our regular daily job where we go to work and make money, it's also stressful sometimes. It also requires our attention,
It can cross a line.
our our body, our stress. And so it's we need to recognize both parts of it in order to understand how to properly place daughtering in our lives without getting burnt out, which then impacts everybody negatively.
I don't know if this is in your book, but something I've talked about a lot with my oldest daughter, and it really was rooted in an essay that she wrote in high school, was the difference between doing something out of duty or obligation and doing it out of love. And that's a little bit of what I hear here in the duality is whether it is a burden or a blessing is probably predicated upon do you view this particular thing as an obligation or as something that you are doing with complete willingness, right? As an act of love. What do you think about that?
To me, those things exist together. They can exist together. They don't always exist together. Okay, we can do things out of obligation and we hate doing them, but we also can say to our parent, they're like, you don't have to come around here all the time. And you can say, I want to,
That's the love,
because
right?
I like being with you, but I like being able to do things for you.
Mhm.
So one of the things I talk about in my book is different ways that daughters can picture happiness in our lives as daughters. How does daughtering contribute to my happiness?
Okay.
So sometimes when I'm daughtering and I just go hang out with my parent and I open, like I go to my mom's house and I always call it shopping, and I just open pantries and I take things and I sit at her table and eat Fritos and bean dip. We love that. And we just interact and we just enjoy each other, and I'm even kind of trying to get mothering from her, and
Yeah.
and it's fun. I like it. um then that might be part of the type of happiness I call hedonic happiness, or I don't call it, it's something
It's
Martin
called Hedonic,
Seligman
right?
came up with. Yeah. And it's just the things that are fun, the
Hmm.
thing, it's fun in the moment, and we like doing it. But other times we have to do things they're not really fun in the moment, but they feel like they're important for our long-term self. Who do I want to be as a daughter, as a person, as a human? And so that kind of leans towards the obligation piece. So I go, um, I do things like we went on a big family vacation and I spent a ton of money on a photo session and I got everybody organized and I was out there sweating. And then later I, got the pictures printed and gave them to everyone. And in the moment, it really wasn't very fun. But I felt like I had contributed to something important to the family, to the big family. And so I added to my eudaimonic happiness. That's that long-term, lifelong happiness.
It's more purpose driven, like
That's
fulfillment.
right. And so we do things out of obligation, but they do still contribute to a form of happiness.
So you could
It's
think
like,
of the hedonic stuff as like, I would do this anyhow. I would go sit and eat Fritos and
yeah,
bean dip right at someone else's house. It would just be fun. And then also, I may not organize a photo shoot for just anyone unless I was getting paid to do it. But in this case, I will because it's purpose driven. I know it matters. That's the eudaimonic level. Yeah, I think that's a really good distinction. That
yeah, so we
do
don't
either.
just have to think of obligation as this wholly negative things. I can do things out of obligation and still think, well, I feel good about being a good person. Like
I
I
think it's
honestly,
harder though, honestly, Allison. I think
well, yeah,
when our core motivation is I'm doing this because I have to, right? I think what it starts to do is maybe eliminate agency, where you were talking about before, like underneath all of this is you have a choice. If I really feel like I don't, like there's such negative consequences to not doing it, or there's so clearly no one else to do it, that then I think it can lead to resentment.
yeah,
What do
yeah.
you think
We
about
get
that?
stuck in that trap
Yeah.
of over functioning is
Mm-hmm.
love, and that I have to give this. And because I did it one time, I have to do it again and
Every
again.
time. Mm-hmm.
And that there is definitely nobody else who can do it just because my siblings aren't jumping up to do it, or because I haven't found someone to pay to help me with this. We can sort of feel like, well, I guess it's me.
I
And
guess
then
I
we
do this
do
now.
it, and then we get stuck in that feeling
Mhm.
of being taken for granted
That's
because
right.
our work as a daughter isn't we're not giving it credit, and we're
Mhm.
not feeling seen and valued, so it doesn't feel like our daughtering matters.
And in some ways, I think there's an analogy to the work as a parent, which can be thankless, right? You said you have
Yeah,
teenagers, I do too. I think I don't expect them to be like, wow, thanks, mom, for making sure I got out of bed. Thanks, mom. Like, that's silly. They're not going to do that. And yet it would be great,
yeah,
to feel a sense of appreciation back. So I think whenever something crosses from, I loved your language of like, you did it once. It was maybe unexpected and delightful, and people were grateful. But then now you're the one who every year has to do the photo shoot. That crosses over to now we're at expectation. And I don't think people have the same gratitude once something is expected. So it changes the whole kind of the calculus shifts a little bit on how the whole ecosystem feels about that particular activity, right? The first time you do it, it's delight, but I wonder if that holds over time and maybe if that's part of what ends up in this dynamic.
for sure. And that can happen in any relationship or any space. I know
Mm-hmm.
your
Yeah.
listeners think a lot about their workplace. I mean, one day, one time you bring cookies for somebody,
Now you're the
and
cookie
then you
girl.
start, now you're
Mm-hmm.
the cookie person, and or you feel like, well, now I have to bring it for everybody's
That's right.
birthday,
That's right.
or I have to bring it at every event, and then you don't want to do it anymore, and you've lost the original joy
That's right.
that you had in it. And so there's an opportunity here to say, I'm not stuck. I'm not forced. I don't have to. I have choice,
Yes.
and I can recalibrate any of these spaces, what I want to do, what I don't want to do. And there's going to be some stuff I have to do, but I don't
Mhm.
have to do everything.
That's right. Or the
I
same
can
way I've
let
always
some
done it
things
at the
go,
same
or the
level.
same way,
So
or I
Allison,
can get some help.
what's this is such overlap in content that I teach. I love like how people who know have been around a while will hear it. I don't even need to echo it. I am curious about the gender dynamic. We specifically are using the word daughtering here. Can you talk a little bit about how that shows up in your work and your research?
Yeah, so I noticed particularly that daughters were different than sons for a few key reasons. And one is research tells us that the relationship between a daughter and her mother, particularly, is one of the most important relationships for her entire lifetime. So it's persisting over decades and over many different contexts. The intimacy and closeness level changes. Whereas we know from research that sons are not always staying that close with a mother or a father. Their closest relationship in life may be their spouse. And so there's a little bit of difference there in how connected sons stay to their family members. But a huge part of what the work of daughtering, where it comes from, and why we feel so much guilt or necessity to be a good daughter is from these social expectations.
Yes.
And women are expected to do daughtering, to show up, to
That's
be
right.
good at it, and to just get it done. And so we never talk about it.
That's right.
And so it kind of ends up reifying itself because you watched your mom do it, you see your friends doing it. And I am calling for us to, take a little time out and say, pause. Let's talk about who's doing what, why, and if I even want to, and make some recalculations, like you said.
Oh my gosh, the overlap is astonishing. So, because I think about the places this could layer, we are already talking about this in partner dynamics at home, right? So, whether you
Yes.
have a spouse or a partner, how are we sharing the work that needs to be done to run this household, to parent these children, to, kind of run this little ecosystem that we've built here together? You're bringing up another arena. Like, okay, so our family of origin, who are all the players involved? What are the roles of all of those people in sustaining the systems of that family of origin? Then we can take it to the workplace. So in all cases, we make some base assumptions of like, this is my job because I am the wife, I am the female partner, I am the mother, I am the daughter. That doesn't necessarily have to be defined. And you're saying like we can pause and insert a little agency and intentionality here and redistribute these responsibilities among a broader collection of people, I suppose.
Absolutely.
What
And
does
what's
that look
funny is that
like?
we're a daughter first. So
Yeah.
you're talking about being a wife and a mother. I mean, those things don't even enter for some women at all. And they don't always last forever for some people. Marriages can
Yeah.
come and go. But the daughter, so first of all, I think we deserve to give some honor and some privilege to the specialness of being a daughter. We're a daughter the first day we're born. We're a daughter till the day we die, even when our parents have been gone for a while.
Mhm.
And so we have to what when we give a little bit more of our attention to how valuable and important this is, and we're not taking for granted our family system either, and how much we're glad they're there to jump in and support us if we need them, then we just start to kind of go to this meta place
Yeah.
of looking at things a little differently and then saying, okay, I can drop some things, I can partner with some people on things, I can change so that I can find more balance in my life. And it starts with these really subtle shifts of
Give us a couple.
redefining.
Give us
All
a
right,
couple.
so the first thing I want women to shift on is redefining what is enough. What does it mean to be good enough? A good daughter? And so, my first recommendation, my first tip is to figure out one thing or two things that you're doing automatically that you can drop and let them drop and see what happens. Okay. And you've been doing them automatically,
Right.
but
Right.
maybe you don't want to. You're
Yep.
thinking now, do I even like that thing? And the next thing I want you to do is make a mental note for yourself that the goal is not perfection. So what you're going to do is strive to be a B plus daughter.
Hmm.
Do it for a month, do it for a quarter, do it for a year.
Yep.
But say to yourself, what if the goal was B plus daughtering? So that I'm not always moving the goalpost of what is good enough, what is worthwhile, what do I have to do to receive love or to be a valuable member of this family?
Who's the grader in that metaphor? Who's grading?
You. You are grading
You're
yourself.
grading
And I
yourself.
think for some of us, very literally,
Mhm.
need to write some things down. So I might say to myself, okay, A very good daughter, the best daughter, would call her mom. Some people would say every day. I would say 3 times a week. Okay. But I'm going to be a B plus daughter. So I'm going to let myself call once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And each of us can have a different metric. Okay. But essentially, we're creating a rubric.
Yes.
But by writing it down or saying it out loud, we're actually going to be able to measure what do I think is the awesome version, and then what is the B plus version, and then find out, am I there or am I even exceeding it?
And because I know I have an audience that maybe veers perfectionistic, I think this is particularly rich territory to say, like,
Yeah,
you also don't have to choose B plus work in every aspect of daughtering. You could say,
sure.
communication, I'm going to be A plus in, but family traditions, I'm going to be a B plus. Like there's elements of daughtering here, like you were talking about, that this isn't an all or nothing approach, but where can you get a little more ease, a little more freedom and space? Because the reality is this is one of those components of our responsibilities that collectively with all of the other responsibilities gets crushing, right? If this is all we had
Yeah.
to do, we'd be great at it. But the fact that there are other things vying for our time and attention and energy, everything has to kind of get right sized a little bit. So I love this notion of I could eliminate something, I could do B plus work. Is there another one coming?
We can do one more, which
Yeah.
is that I would like to recommend in terms of, how do I do B plus daughtering? Try microdosing your daughtering. Okay. Microdosing daughtering means I'm going to give daughtering in small amounts, and I'm going to call that good enough. So, for me, an example of microdosing daughtering is 10-minute phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
So, I try to do more frequent phone calls because I put that on my rubric as something valuable that I know my parents like. But I'm going to give these short bursts and not think that an effective phone call has to be an hour or 2 hours. I don't have that to give from my emotional bandwidth as often as I would like. But what I
Mm-hmm.
do have to give is 10 minutes of saying, here's what I did. What did you do? Oh, that's great. I love you so much. I value you. Click,
Click.
hang up the call.
Yeah.
Because I have to reserve some of those emotions and some of those times for other people.
Yeah.
In particular, my teenagers need a lot of my
That's right.
emotions right now.
That's right.
They're really digging deep into that well. So I have to trust that my parent can also take care of themselves, that they're going to find that fulfillment somewhere else if they need to.
And I think it's such an important note that this does vacillate seasonally, right? Like there are seasons of your life that and not just ages and stages, right? But seasons you're in. Like if you are in a really significant crunch at work, that is a season where daughtering may need to step down a level. If you have a crisis with a child or a newborn or a teenager, like there's seasons of life, short seasons or longer, where things ebb and flow. And sometimes I think we get ourselves in trouble because kind of what you were saying earlier, we do it once, we do it this way, and it's set in stone as this is how we do it forevermore, versus allowing things to really change, right? And evolve. And in either direction, we can increase or decrease the time and energy that we put into some of these things. I love it. I love it. You're giving us so much permission, Allison. And I think that's when you started with the word agency, you had me there because I think the more we can remind particularly women, but really adults, that we do have more choices than we're giving ourselves credit for. We're acting like there's no other way. And often we just haven't stopped long enough to assess and think and maybe reimagine what could be equally good. And you're so well equipped. And I love that you've spent your time and devoted your like academic energy to this because it's really important.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important for women in our bodies to have that balance, to find places where we notice where stress or tension is coming from, and sometimes that we're doing it to ourselves, and find ways that we can seek a little relief, but without not relief and that we stop doing something and then we double up on guilt, but relief all the way around. I love that word permission, and recognizing that if we do some of these things, we're not just quitting on our family, we're not
No.
disconnecting, we're doing these things to make the relationship better. to make it stronger longer and to model for other generations, our kids and the future, how to do family really richly without self-sacrifice or self-erasure.
Maybe sustainably is like the through line of like, it has to be
Sustainable.
something, right? Yeah, that we can sustain and that we can model something that is um, admirable or aspirational. I'm so drawn to the data on how many young women, we both have teenagers, are like, I don't even want to have kids because that looks like a terrible life situation. And I think we have to be careful about both what we're modeling for daughtering and mothering in terms of, do we want to create something that they look at and think, oh, I don't even want to do that. You know, generationally, I think that's a
Yeah.
really significant dynamic that I'm
Yeah,
very
how we
aware of.
talk about things is so important. And that's why we're trying to get both sides here. What is work? What is daughtering? What is the burden and the stress that can pull us down? But also recognizing if we can fix a little of that side, we can lean into the blessing, the goodness, and the value, which may be what some of our younger generation is missing about
Yes.
what's great about being a parent,
Yes.
which is just a reminder that I need to narrate that. I need to narrate my daughtering. I need to narrate my parenting. I was just telling my husband I need to come home and say nice things about my workplace because I just have this tendency sometimes to dump the
Yes.
hard parts
Mhm.
and say those out loud. And I want to make sure I say the good parts out loud. I love being connected in an intergenerational family. I love having a job that pays me money. I love being a parent.
Yes.
And but I don't need to pretend like it's easy or perfect. I have to have that balance of describing both of these things, not just for my children, but for me,
Oh,
so that
that's
my
so
brain is
important.
processing it too.
That is brilliant. It really is. And I think being expanding the narrative to really consciously talk about all of it. You know, we want to be honest, and it is a multifaceted endeavor, all of these roles that we play. Well, you have been fantastic and enlightening. So I'm so glad that we were able to get your time to be on the show. Can you tell people where they can find you and your work?
Absolutely. I would love for women, if you're a daughter, if you know a daughter, love a daughter, have a daughter, to pick up the book, Good Daughtering. So it's this bright pink one.
Beautiful.
It's out February 2026. And find me particularly on Instagram at Daughtering 101. And you can find all the other places to reach me in my Substack and my website from there. But please contact me and let me know what you're thinking about daughtering.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much for being here today. It was a delight to have you. If you are new to the Brilliant Balance Show, thanks for tuning in today. I hope you loved today's episode. If you don't yet follow the show or subscribe, go ahead and do that so that you never miss an episode. That is all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.